Okay, so here is the Memoji memory game. I have a list of 3 websites where I deployed this application. And here are a few GIFs showing the animations, general user interactivity, and the user interface. Down at the bottom, I have some tests. I'm using Cypress.io and a list of what I used to build this project. Okay, for AWS EC2 and Heroku, I am using a simple server here. Quick look at the HTML. I am leveraging Bootstrap for this project. Okay, in React, here's the index. I am using the render method to render the app component and injecting that into the root div. Here is the app component. I will actually start off with the return. We have a main wrapper and h1, and embedded in that is a component for the hover card. That is just a few spans. A boards container, which contains the actual playboard and the scoreboard. Okay, so I am making use of hooks here, namely use ref and use state for state, and then for lifecycle, use effect. Continuing on, there are 2 click handlers here, one for the shuffle button, and then the other, when you click the H1, it actually solves the game for you. And the hover card actually describes that call to action. So for animations, I am making use of set timeout in part. As such, I am leveraging a queue to handle the timer IDs. So for example, on mount, I'll iterate through those IDs to clear those timeouts. The board component is also stateful. I'm using useRef to get a hold of the canvas element, which is for the confetti at the very end for a winner. And then use state for an instantiation of a queue. Again, that's to handle the timer IDs for the animations. Here's a few invocations of use effect, and I do that to separate concerns. Here are a few callbacks for event listeners. This is for when a user clicks a card. So we are in the board component, so that means that this event handler is delegated to the board. Also making use of touch events as well, namely the touch start and the touch end. So the return JSX consists of a wrapper, namely for the cards, all 24 cards, and conditionally rendering the masking div. And the reason I have that is for when the user clicks the H1 to solve the game, the masking div appears conditionally so that the user can't click the cards as it's being solved. Also conditionally rendering the canvas element, so when there's a winner, whether or not the user clicked the H1 to solve it or they solved the game on their own, the confetti pops up in the canvas. Each card component is stateful. There's a Boolean used to determine whether or not the card is visible. There's another instantiation of a queue, and then using useRef again to grab hold of the card div. A couple lifecycle hooks for cleanup, and then one to determine if this card is active. The return is just a couple of divs, and here is the emoji that we actually see rendered to the screen. And then each card component is memoized. The scoreboard component makes use of useRef to track the previous attempts and matches, and in the useLayout effect hook compares the incoming attempts and matches with the previous and removes the animation class. Immediately following that, the useEffect essentially adds it back, and that's how I get the jello effect of the attempts and matches. Below that are some event handlers for the shuffle button, which actually invokes the function in the app component, which resets the state there. Finally, the JSX consists of some more emojis. So the hover card just consists of a few spans, and it is being conditionally rendered based on whether or not it's currently being shuffled, so if it's animating, or if the user clicked the H1 to solve the game. So in both of those cases, I did not want the hover card to appear, and that's what that's doing. Lastly, the tests take a top-to-bottom approach. So here I start with solving it by clicking the H1, test the hover card to make sure it appears or doesn't appear appropriately. The tallies is where I click on random cards to ensure that the tallies are incrementing appropriately. And finally, the shuffle button. So I had a lot of fun with this project. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you very much.